And you know, another thing that happens is you'll get a lot of false positives. Because, for example, your child goes out to the yard, you'll excuse me, someone bangs him, you know, in his rear. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing, you know, abusive about that. So they might wind up coming to you for something like this and listen to them and talk to them about it. But you're going to get, by nature, you're going to get false positives, but it's an important part of the process. And you should take these discussions seriously and sit down with them. Don't say, hey, you know, I didn't really mean that. So, because that, you're confusing them. You got to, you really, I encourage you to be consistent. How do you respond to that? It's good. So you say, well, he should not be touching you. Who was it? Tell me a little bit about it. If it's something repeated that people are really hitting him like that, it's really not appropriate. You know, it might be that they were online to go out for a recess break and, you know, somebody just pushed him. So you find out a little bit about it and you say, if it happens more, please tell me about it. I'm done with the first half. Just to review quickly. Tell your children, nobody's allowed to tell them not to tell their parents. Do work on personal space. Nobody's allowed to make you feel uncomfortable. Good touch, bad touch. And the one other thing, just a little bit of a how-to, I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes on venue and time and how to do this. The research shows, Dr. Pelkowitz shared this with me, and I found it very interesting. I read a number of studies on the subject, that the optimum anxiety level for parents to speak to children is pretty low. And if you think of a continuum of 0 to 10, 10 being the most anxious you could be, and 0 is, you know, sitting on a mountaintop watching the sun go down with the drink in your hand, you know. So the optimum anxiety level is like 2, 3, 4, not 6 or 8. Because children, the research shows that when parents get very nervous, the kids get bugged out. They get so nervous that they really can't concentrate on what you're saying. So if you have no anxiety, they'll think that, you know, you tell them a lot of things. Don't chew with your mouth open, you know, don't, whatever. They don't know that it's something serious. So you need to explain that, but not bug them out. One thing I would suggest that might be an idea would be to speak about general safety, speak about wearing a bicycle helmet, and sit down with them and have a general safety talk, and then bring in these things. You'll probably get more comfortable after the first or second thing, and you'll be able to, you know, trust me, you know, you're going to probably be uncomfortable the first time, just sitting down out of the clear blue sky. Yes, please. So the question is, you might give your children ideas. They're going to say, why would somebody touch me there? So you say, it's people who do this who aren't well. It's not a healthy thing to do. And there are people out there who are unfortunately not well and like doing this to people. That's what you say, just like that. Okay. And you know, it's one of the I spoke before about this balance that you need to have. One of the things that makes it so difficult is that you really, like I said about, you know, you teach your children to be edel and respectful to elders, and then you're telling them if an elder tells you something, it's a balance. So we raise our children with tznius and privacy and modesty. Nonetheless, the research shows that children who are naive about their own bodies are by far easier to molest than children who are more street smart and knowledgeable. So what I'm suggesting, and if you're interested in looking, I'm sorry, I don't have the name handy, a fellow spent 20 years going around to prisons and interviewing serial pedophiles. And he wrote a book about his experiences, and he asked them, tell me, one of the questions that he asked the guy was, which kids are easiest to molest? He says, show me a child who's naive, and I can do anything I want with them. So that's the balance. So by telling them, you need to tell them that there are people out there who do things like this, and that obviously there's something wrong with that, but you need to know that there are people, just like, maybe give an example, just like we know people don't steal from anybody else. You're not supposed to take things from people, but people do that. That's why we have an alarm in a car. And people, right, okay, people aren't, you might want to give examples like that. Okay, so you say, because of these things, we have a code on our door because we don't want people coming in. I wouldn't go to other people's houses. You wouldn't, but there are people who do. So there are people who touch other people's private parts. It's rare that a molester goes 0 to 60. to somebody they don't know and immediately start with them. That's not what usually happens. It's usually someone they know, and it comes around in that way. But there are no hard and fast rules. The idea is that you tell them. In other words, if somebody's tickling them, an uncle is tickling them, and they think it's cute, and then they don't start not liking it at some point in time, they stop and say, please don't do that to me. That's the point. The point is when somebody comes and says, let me tell you a little secret, and they listen, and then it says, don't tell your parents, and that's where the line is. The line is where these things were. When the line crosses those things, that's when it's time to step in. I'd like to get to some of the parenting issues, and then we'll take some more questions if you would like. As you see, a lot of this is predicated on having interaction with your children. You really have to have a close relationship in order to be able to have these types of talks. They have to be comfortable telling you about something that was uncomfortable to them. That you're making a lot of assumptions about what they need to do. So I'm just going to tell you a few general rules. Number one is encourage your children to share their day with you. Again, this is not abuse directly related to abuse, but it is important in the scheme of things. So number one, encourage your children to share their day with you. When they come home, get them in the habit from a very young age. How was your day? Ask them specific questions. I generally encourage parents to ask, I call it a targeted question rather than a generic question, okay? If you tell me, Rabbi Horowitz, I ask my son every day, how was your day? And he says, and runs up to his room. Right? Yeah, got it? Okay? I ask him, yeah, whatever, fine, yeah, it's good, And what you're doing is you're asking, respectfully, you're asking the wrong question. When I stop Michael and say, Michael, how's it going? If he starts talking to me too much, I'm going to check my emails and walk away from him. How's it going? Well, actually, I have a little infection on my foot. I asked you, how you doing? I didn't mean anything. I wanted to see how you doing means hello. It's just a nicer way. So he says, fine. He may have a migraine headache, but he's not going to talk. What's the definition of someone who doesn't have a life? You ask them how they're doing, and they actually tell you. So when you ask your children questions like this, you're going to get generic answers. How was your day? Okay, that's an appropriate answer to your question. If you say, how was your chemistry exam, or how did it go with that boy on the bus, and you follow with the previous conversation. If you ask your child a question that I couldn't ask, because I wouldn't know as an outsider, I can almost guarantee you that you'll get real responses. Now, teenagers will still be teenagers, but if you ask those types of questions, I really would encourage you to consider setting this as a goal. Ask your child a targeted question a day. And it's something you can do as busy as you are. And if you don't catch up on the weekends, and ask them 5. For those with BlackBerries, if I can use a BlackBerry as a life tool, and a lot of other types of cell phones have this, when you send somebody a text message, the whole stream of messages that you had with that person pops up, right? You see all the text messages that you send in the last year. That's how I encourage you to think of your kids. Not that they're text messages that you can shut off. No, what I'm saying is when they come home, you say, what did I talk to them about over the last few days? And it totally changes the conversation. It totally changes the conversation. You have a conversation, and you do this with people that you really love. You have a little bit of hard drive where you can go over and have a conversation which lets you know that I know who you are and I remember what we spoke about. It's an extraordinarily important tool, and to the extent that you want your children to come to you, chas v'sholom, if there's a problem, you got to have this in place, and you have to do this way before anything starts. Okay? Really listen, shut it down, try to turn off 5 minutes, don't answer your phones. 5 minutes. Just when the kids come home, when you have a little bit of time. Teach the children that they can discuss anything with you, and I think it's important that you tell them this. If there's anything going on in your life, even if I'm not going to like it, I want to know about it. Tell me about it, and you tell them this, even if it's going to upset you. I can't tell you how many, when the kids get into some of the adolescents, I don't have as much time to do this as I used to, but especially when I was doing a lot of this and speaking to adolescents who were in trouble, I would automatically ask them, did you speak, do you discuss this with your kids? Tell me I'm starting to use drugs or whatever it is. Do you discuss this with your parents? He says, no. Like, what's the point? Like, what's the point? I'm just going to upset them. They can't help me. Like, what's the point? One kid told me, he's so cute. He said, I said, why don't you talk to him about, he says, let me tell you something, Rabbi. As soon as I tell my mother anything that she doesn't like about music, about friends, right away she goes and takes out a tillum, you know? so he said, like, what's the point? So it's important to tell them this. Really say it. Sweetheart, you don't have to say it every day, but look, sweetheart, if there's something going on in your life, I want to know about it, and I'd much rather know about it and be upset than not know what's going on in your life. You know, there's an expression in the abuse realm. They say, hurt people, comma, hurt people. Hurt people, people who are hurt. Hurt people, hurt people. And so many of the victims, of the predators even, are victims themselves of molestation. We have a lot of people running around who are victims themselves and did not have professional help to work through it. And you know, it is what it is. I'm not even discussing the morality or everything, whatever it is what it is. Lamaisa, bottom line, we need to protect our children. That's the bottom line. And I'm telling you, I appeal to you. I hope you found this meaningful. And if you did, I beg you, tell 5 people, tell 5 friends of yours, forward email to them and beg them to speak to their children. I'm telling you now, our children will be safe when every single parent speaks to their children like this. Because if you're doing it and there are people, your neighbor does not doing it, they are vulnerable to being abused. And if their children get abused, your children are in danger. We all have to do this. There's no other way. Everybody's got to do this together in a responsible way, in a Torah-dic way, in a tznius-dic way. And it's the only thing we can do, because there really is no other way. There's terrible recidivism rate. No system in the world is perfect. Teaching children how to respond to this is by far the best protection. I give you a bracha from the bottom of my heart. Hashem should bench you with nachas from your children, and you should be protected from all of this stuff. And you should raise healthy, well-adjusted children that will be a source of nachas to you and to your entire family.